One's ready. Go!
Boy, oh boy, I need y'all to buckle up. We brought Matt Cubbler back. If you guys remember, we did an episode number 1 about who killed Job Price. If you guys aren't tracking, Job Price was a SEAL Team 4 commander that died under very weird circumstances. It was initially ruled suicide. Matt Cubbler came out on the first episode, and he talked about the what, about how this could never have happened. By the time we got to the end of that episode, from my personal standpoint, there was no way that Job committed suicide. Well, Matt Cubbler has every single receipt, forensic pathologists that say that it could not have happened. And now we're going to talk about the why. A lot of you in the subject or in the comment section ask, well, okay, well, that's the what, but why? Why would they do this? Man, Matt goes in to granular detail about how this happened. So I can't wait for you guys to hear it. I will say we've got something special for you guys. We talk about training efficiently, training correctly, and making sure that you're actually like doing something every single workout to get you closer to your goal of being selected in Air Force Special Warfare. And as a matter of fact, every single other special operations job. Well, we got something for you. Man, Pose Fitness that we've been working with for years at this point, put out a fantastic application. You can go over to posefitness.io and check everything out. What does Pose Fitness actually do for you? It has an AI integrated app, and you can see those little dots right there, and you can see a dude doing a pull-up. We build an app specifically for you to tell you if you are doing a good rep or not. Not a recruiter, not a developer, not that those guys don't know what they're doing, but I can tell you using AI integration and a phone-based app if you are doing the correct rep. It'll track your workouts. You can build your own workout plans on there. There's even one for the IFT, baby. You can literally look at it, and anytime you want, you can have a verified AI-driven 2-standard application that will tell you if you're doing your reps correctly. The worst thing in the world, and unfortunately this happens all the time, people tell us they've been training for 6 months, they get down to San Antonio, and what happens to them, Trent?
Dude, they tell me they've been training for 6 years, and then they fail everything, and it's like, well, you're not training correctly, so I'm sorry that you wasted so much time doing things the wrong way. Building in those bad habits, only to get here to find out that you've been doing it wrong. And you meet the standard or you don't, and then we have to kick them out the door. It's really not what we like to do. We'd rather have someone train hard, meet the standard, and come on in and make it through the pipeline and become part of the community. So this is something that we've obviously been working on for a long time. It's very important to us that even if you can't get a coach, if you can't get out to one of the events that we're at to get our advice and all the other stuff, man, you get the app. You use the one's ready code. You set it up. It's super simple. You have it record you, and it'll be like yes or no. And what you have with this as well is, man, you can hit us up. You're like, hey, I wish it would do this. You have a direct line to the developers of this app to make recommendations if you see something that you want.
New exercises all the time, and it's excuse me, it's not just the IFT exercises, not just pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups. We can get your squat online. We can get every single piece of information and data that you need to correct your bad training habits and make it happen.
What about a 2-mile run? Because I've heard the 2-mile run for the Air Force is coming, and it's going to be super, super hard, and it's almost impossible.
Oh my God, it's 2 more laps, people. I can't believe we're having this conversation. It's 2 more laps, everybody. Shut up. It's 2 more laps. Shut up. It's 2 more laps. Go over to posefitness.io. Make sure you're downloading that app. Use our code at checkout. They're partners. We are partners in this thing with Pose. We understand that you guys sometimes don't have the guidance at your fingertips when you need it. And we are always here to bring value. And that's what we're doing with posefitness.io. So make sure to use the code One's Ready when you sign up.
First month
hit us
free.
up if you need. It's free 90 free.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
First month free.
First month free? Come on. Go try it out and then see if you don't want to stick with it, because I guarantee you're going to want to. So go over to postfitness.io, look for the app on the App Store or your Google Play Store, download that bad boy, try it out for a month, and let us know how it works. You guys have a direct line in the app development. All that being said, strap in, folks. It's this one gets a little bit dark, but it gets a little bit dark because you realize that Job Price was killed by his team, and Matt's going to explain exactly why. Hope you enjoy it. I love a good dynamic warm-up before any event, and that's what you just saw there. I hope you guys are watching on YouTube. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. We got a great one for you today. Good friend Matt Cubbler is back here to talk about some very interesting happenings inside of the SEAL community. I hope you heard episode 1 that we did, Who Killed Job Price? I think we answered that question, but today we're going to talk about why. Why in the world would a SEAL team coalesce against its commander? and perform probably one of the most heinous hacks that we've seen in the special operations community, at least in the last 20 years. I can't speak hyperbolically enough for how disgusting this event is. Matt, thanks for coming back, man. This is an important issue. I know that you're personally connected to it. So thanks for coming back again and really fleshing out the why for the what that we talked about last time. Why don't you give everybody an overview, just quick intro for who you are, and then how did we get to this point?
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, we enjoyed ourselves on that first episode, and hopefully people saw it. Yeah, I'm Matt Cubbler, a 30-year law enforcement, former air marshal, local street cop for 30 years, retired in 23. Was Army, active duty, Army intel during the first Gulf War. So I'm one of those older guys that doesn't have anything to relate on the GWOT level, but
it's okay. If you have a caffeine addiction and cynicism, then you got GWOT. Yeah. That's what you got.
Yeah, it's yeah, I'll digress a little bit here. It is a it's a competition for the same voice in GWOT. Yeah. Like everybody's trying to be the same thing, the same mold, and it's fucking nauseating.
It's so bad. Watch. Yeah, we talked about it last night. We were talking, just a further digression, but like the Tim Kennedy stuff finally broke. Like Tim has claimed forever, oh, I never claimed I had a BSM. There's a video, Tim. You were on video with a guy that was like, oh, you have a BSM, and you said yes, and then he's like, oh, how did that happen? And then you explained how you got the fake BSM. It's your voice. There's no whatever. But my good friend Nate from Valhalla VFT, we were talking on the War Room last night. And he was like, there's no reason for it. He was like, everybody on this panel has these stories and has these things, but it's like, it's always the guys that have done nothing that want to be like, oh, it was GWOT and I have so much PTSD and you guys just don't know. And it's always the same thing. And it's always coming from the guys that didn't do anything. The guys on, the panel of the War Room, Nate was like, we have a ton of stories. Everybody here has war stories. Aaron's never told me a war story because we don't care. That's not the point. You don't make it your whole whole personality. Yeah, but that's a really good way to look at it, is everybody's competing for the same voice. That's really good.
Yeah, it baffles my mind, but for why I'm here, Commander Joe Price was Commander SEAL Team 4. He and I went to high school together. Everyone wants to turn this into some sort of, who does he think he is, investigating Joe Price if they weren't even best friends. First of all, fuck you. Second of all, I'm a cop. That's what I've been for 30 years. I investigate shit. And when I'm asked to investigate something, especially something as monumental as Job's death by his family, then I have an obligation morally and with my integrity to investigate it to the best of my ability. So it's been 6 years that I've been investigating Joe Price's death. He died December 22nd, 2012 of a single gunshot wound to the head in his bunk while sleeping in Tarankot, Afghanistan. Bob Ripley, I think is what it was called. And it was immediately determined a suicide. And there was never any look at any other option other than suicide. And that's been the narrative since 2012. And his family came to me in 2019 and asked me to take a look at his file. It's the CID NCIS combined investigative file. It's 375 pages or whatever it is. And it wasn't even a complete file. There was things I had to FOIA that took 6 years to get. But after reviewing it, after investigating it, after speaking to dozens and dozens and dozens of SEALs and being brought in actually to a group of people that have been investigating SEAL corruption for decades. I became kind of the forward spokesperson for these people who are behind the scenes doing all this investigating on multiple different topics. My only goal was to solve Job's case. One of the key components to this investigation was realizing that an intentional cover-up occurred, that there was a concerted effort to destroy evidence, to hide evidence, to alter evidence, to collaborate on statements on how you want this to be told. And after 6 years, and really after 5 years, because it happened about January 24 when things started to open up for me. I got to the point where I knew he didn't kill himself, but I couldn't figure out how to prove that or to get the Navy to even give a shit. 2024, I interviewed Rob O'Neill in January, not once, not twice, but 3 times. First time was mostly about the Bin Laden raid. And long story short, every time I interviewed Rob, I got to talk about Job. And those cases, those conversations with O'Neill went viral in a sense. And so that brought a lot of light to Job's case. And I realized that's a strategy. That's something I can use to my advantage if I want to continue to get Job light. And I talked about Jocko. I talked about Mark Luttrell. Talked about Roberts Ridge, talked about Sean Ryan. And for the record, I don't know if you watch Anti-Hero or not, but they had Eddie Gallagher on the other night on their live, and someone in the super chat, which I don't really get super chats. Like, why would you spend $200 get your fucking question asked? I don't get that.
Well, hold on. You're about to tell us about how you're now made aware of this super chat. That's why you do it, because you go on big shows and you give them money, and then Tim Pool reads off your super chat, brother.
Yeah, well, I'm never going to give anybody money to read a fucking question. I can tell you that much.
Well, that's why you're here. We do this shit for free, brother.
So someone asked a question about what Eddie thought about me investigating Job, and what Eric Deming, who was whistleblower, that came out after watching me talking about Job and other things, and what he said. And Eddie pretty much, they clowned on me, which is fine. Brent clowned on me in a way. Tyler definitely did, and Eddie called me a douche.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I don't give a fuck. I don't know these guys. I mean, I've met Tyler and Brent, but it doesn't really impact my life. But his opinion on Job was based on what he had heard, right, through the rumor mill, the grapevine. And he said that there's no way it could have been a murder because the rumor mill would have talked about that, and he hadn't heard it because he says he was there 2 weeks after Job died.
Come on, man. Just from
and then
that, yeah.
He went into an NCIS tirade, which is what really made me giggle when I was listening to him. He's talking about how inept NCIS is, and we're going to talk about this in the episode. And he's like, NCIS is the worst, the this, the that, the this, the that. And on a comment on YouTube, I said, hey, Eddie, I'd love to go do a deep dive with you. I forgive you for calling me a douche.
Mm-hmm.
No offense. Because it all started, he and I had a back and forth on a Sean Ryan reel that the anti-hero guys did when I was on. And I pretty much intentionally did this to get a reel made so that it would go viral. But talking about Sean Ryan and his international drug dealing escapades.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie,
which he's admitted to on his podcast.
Very much so. Multiple countries, which is the definition of international. Eddie comments on that post on Instagram that, this is a stupid way to try to get on a platform like Sean Ryan. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not. Second of all, this isn't about your opinion or Sean's opinion. This is about Joe Price. And if he wants to bring me on to talk about Joe Price and help me solve a murder, that'd be great. I said, otherwise you're in my way or you're a problem. And I said, and by the way, I didn't really like the way that you handled your job that much either when you were in country. So that was kind of that was a very limited back and forth between him. So he calls me a douche because of that. Well, quite frankly, he started it. I didn't tag him. But anyways, he says that NCIS is inept. And I said, okay, off of that logic, how is it that your case, NCIS shit the bed on so badly, and you were proven to be the opposite of what they said? I said, how is it that they somehow, with all the blunders and all the fuck ups and all the cover ups and all the destroyed evidence in the Joe Price case, they got it right?
Right.
Yeah.
How is that possible in your argument that NCIS is inept? How is it they were inept on the right side of it?
Yeah. NCIS sent you to jail, Eddie. They prosecuted you and your family and performed a character assassination at the behest of the DOD and the Navy, and it turned out to be wrong. And in this case, however, you're like, no, they locked this one down because it's my team's. Come on, man.
That's pretty much the way it's described. And again, I don't have a problem with Eddie. I don't give a fuck if he killed anybody. I really don't. I don't care if Sean Ryan was an international drug dealer. All I care about is bringing to light, maybe in a cinematic, dramatic sort of way, these idiots who do this stuff in order to get Joe Price attention. And people don't like that tactic. I really don't care. It worked. And I, since the Rob O'Neill and then all the other things I've talked about on podcasts, I've gotten forensic evidence to prove that Job was murdered. And I have forensic pathologists and world-renowned who will sign their name to a statement that says that Job was murdered based on forensic science. So again, I don't need to prove to anybody anymore. I don't have to go on podcasts to prove that Job was murdered. I don't have to have a conversation with any idiot who doesn't believe me. I just don't. I did what I said I was going to do. Now I just got to get the Navy to reopen it. So that's kind of the overview. Job was murdered. End of story.
My first question is how much time does Eddie have and all these other guys have on their hands that they can just run around and comment on all these things? It's confusing to me that they spend so much time like on YouTube and Instagram like commenting on your stuff and calling you names. It's wow.
And I don't have a problem with Eddie. I don't know Eddie. I could care less about Eddie.
Well,
yeah. And again, I wouldn't have had a conversation with Eddie had he not commented on what I wrote. And Sean Ryan, again, I don't have a problem with him. Actually, I'm starting to like him a little bit based on his current opinions on most things that I find interesting. We actually agree upon. Doesn't mean that he wasn't an international drug dealer, and that I wonder why he wasn't held accountable for any of that stuff. But with the anti-hero guys clowning on me, and I get it. That's their shtick. That's what they're going to do. But they made it sound like I was some kind of crackpot weirdo on Job's case, and that there was a lot of mess ups in the investigation, but there's no way that he actually was killed. And I don't need Brent Tucker or Tyler Hoover apologizing on my behalf to anybody. I'm a grown man who says what he needs to say, and I don't care if it offends you or doesn't. But Sean Ryan was a drug dealer, and Eddie Gallagher is a douche, and those are two facts. Because he's a douche only because he made Matt Cubbler part of his world. I don't care about Eddie Gallagher. I never talked about Eddie Gallagher. So again, and I know the anti-hero guys are tight with him, and they're tight with Sean, and they've apologized for things I said about Sean, which were true, saying that that's not their opinion. They allowed me to have a platform, and that's fine. I thank them for having me on twice and doing great numbers, by the way, on their. I feel like Trump. Great numbers.
Great numbers, the biggest numbers they've ever seen.
Ever.
You are Operation Midnight Hammer.
Can you do the rest of the podcast in a Trump voice? And then, no, actually,
that'd be great.
Pretty
and it's just sort of like not a critique, but it's just sort of an observation, right? Like, because I have zero feelings about the anti-hero guys. Like, I'm 1 degree of separation away from those dudes, and I think they do good work. But for a platform that literally makes their entire product is going on and saying inflammatory things in the middle of the inflammatory thing. So they don't know the whole facts. They go on and they say inflammatory things. It's so weird that they would turn around and be like, well, I can't believe you said these inflammatory things for something that we're trying to expose. Like, that's your whole gig, bro. Like, how are you mad at somebody else for doing your gig? You guys are all you guys are all using the same voice to use your words earlier. Yeah. And somehow you're the douchebag for it. Like, that's a really weird thing to try to reconcile in your head.
Well, it's a whole you weren't there mindset, right? That's the essential argument that every GWOT guy that is defending their Special Forces, Navy SEALs, whatever, or what they've done themselves, that's their argument, is that you can't say anything about it because you weren't there. And that's the shtick that everybody uses for their justification.
Right. I've never been to any number of these places that I have an opinion on, but you can look at the facts of the matter and form an opinion off of it without ever actually touching your feet there. I mean, that's pretty fair.
And crimes are usually solved by people who weren't there. If I was there for the murder, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So,
I've been to TK and roundabouts, so I think it's okay for us to talk about it.
We go. Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Trent.
Yeah.
And there guys, you go. Please go listen, because we're referencing some stuff and you guys might not understand what we're talking about. Why Matt is so sure. Ask yourself why a SEAL team would not secure a murder site for 9 hours. Ask why NCIS would not secure the site of what they didn't know, that they thought it was a suicide, which, by the way, happened like 20 meters away from a manned office where Job was sleeping. Tell me why that none of the ballistic evidence that they've presented matches up in any way. And Matt has forensic scientists that can look at this and go, they never looked at the gun. Ask me why the SEAL team completely scrubbed Job's body before they turned it over to authorities and placed him in different clothing. That doesn't make any sense. These are the things that we talked about, like laid all the breadcrumbs out for how Matt got to his, and in my opinion, Matt, you sold me. Like, there's no way this is a suicide. This is a murder.
And not for nothing, all those things on their own merit, it's all contextual and it's all circumstantial. And that's what I've been fighting for 5 years, is the contextual circumstantial narrative that I was piecing together, and then also the motives behind it, which we're going to talk about. But it wasn't until I got the forensic pathologist to go, yes, here's why you are correct, even though I didn't know why I was correct on the forensic side. I just knew it didn't look right, that didn't seem right, this shouldn't be there, whatever the things I was able to identify. But they went and said, scientifically speaking, this couldn't have happened had he committed suicide. And also, many of these things happen after he died.
Yeah.
Like you don't stage crime scenes when you think somebody committed suicide.
Right.
You just don't. That is. And if anybody wants to say, oh, they're Navy SEALs, they don't know anything about crime scene containment and blah 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 blah, I don't give a fuck. That has zero impact on the answer, which is, forensically speaking, his body was moved multiple times after he was shot in the head and was dead. And that, by the way, the gun he was holding in his chest, on his chest like this, could never have been in his hand in that position.
No.
Never. Scientifically speaking, it's impossible. So I don't have to prove anymore that Job was murdered. I just got to get someone in power to listen to me. That's it.
So taking it back, I'm with you. The why though, that's really going to be the intriguing thing. So
Yeah.
like as you kind of pull that thread into the background, where did it all start, and what was like, where did the motive start to do one of these things? Which, by the way, I want to put out there, like, if you've never been on a fob surrounded by a bunch of dudes and realize how easy it would be to do certain things and to get away with it, it's when your brain realizes that, it can be an interesting feeling once you start having arguments with a whole team of dudes. So
Right.
yeah. But where did all this start?
Well, let me give you a little backstory on Job. Job was kind of the quintessential naval officer in naval special warfare. He had checked every box as far as the trajectory to become an admiral. 6 months after he died, he was scheduled to go to Rhode Island to a war college so that he could then continue on that track to becoming an admiral. He was well respected within every single person that ever worked with him or knew him. The officer rank, those above and below, respected him because he was meticulous, he was driven, he was loyal, and he loved the Navy and the Navy SEALs. So sometimes those qualities don't translate to command level positions in a war theater, right? Sometimes being meticulous and holding people to a standard of military bearing and conduct, and expecting certain things isn't appreciated very well by men under him. One being, I know for a fact, because he's gone out on podcasts and talked about it, Rob Huberty, who was there. I think he was LPO or whatever the hell that is, enlisted guy. And so people were unhappy with Job because of the way he ran his team in theater. There was a team before him, Team 2, which was commanded by Mike Hayes, who Team 4, which was Job's command, had relieved. There was a major dust up there where a local Afghani was killed by Afghan local police and SEALs. And they tortured him. They hit him with heavy rocks in the chest. They shot rounds around his head. All kinds of stuff. And then they released him finally. And then maybe a day later, less than a day, he was dead. So there was this big investigation, and Job had gone over in June to do kind of like a pre-deployment workup with the commander there, Mike Hayes.
Yeah. Advon, it's super, for everybody out there listening, super, like I did this all the time. The command team, typically you're enlisted and your officer will go over before the team and left seat and right seat with the commander that is doing the work now, so that when your team gets there, you already have a lay of the land, you know who you have to talk to get certain things done. You understand how operations work. I went over, I think, like 2 weeks, maybe sometimes 3 weeks beforehand, where you would be the incoming team commander. You would just like look at stuff and figure out, because there's a whole bunch of queep involved in this. Like deploying is cool, but the things you need to do while you're deployed are still super not cool, right? Like you need to know who to send your sit reps to. You need to know what meetings you're supposed to go to. You need to know the lay of the land and who the players are, right? And for the SEALs and what their mission was, they would have to understand who the local architecture was, who were these Afghan national police that they were talking to, like who were the players in there. So totally normal for commanders to go over beforehand and get a lay of the land.
So one of the things he had to do while he was there during his pre-deployment workup with Commander Hayes was look at the evidence from this event that occurred with the SEAL Team 2 guys and the locals. And, Job's recommendation was that they should be court-martialed, that they should begin proceedings. And also, as a result of this event where they killed a guy, the local Taliban were talking on the radio, and some army guys overheard the intercept saying that there was going to be retaliation or retribution for the death of their local. When Job came back after he left there, and then came back to run the team, they moved the base, 60 kilometers ish away from where it was before. And I sent you, I think, in a text, Aaron, the Kalash case, all the actual official documents from that case and in statements and things like that. So if you want to tag that in there, if you still have that, if not, I'll send it all back to you. So anyways, the retaliation part is key because no one ever told Joe. There was never any transfer of that information to Team 4 when Team 2 left. And I don't know enough about the Afghani effort and how far they travel, but apparently 60 kilometers is not a very far distance for someone to go carry out a retaliation ambush. And if you guys have all been forward deployed, and as a commander, your goal is to have the best deployment possible. You want to have your mission objectives met. You want to have no casualties. You want to have inflicting pain on the enemy. And in their case, they were doing, winning over hearts and minds as part of their mission operation requirements. And I get all that. And sadly, Job got screwed some on that because shortly after they got there, 2 Army, I guess they're like PSYOP guys, were killed by Afghan National Police on green on blue. And then 2 Navy SEALs died in November of 2012, Matt Cantor and Eric Everts. And one of those 2 was an ambush. And, Joe was getting a lot of pressure from above to do daylight raids, putting his guys at risk. And that ambush happened during daylight. And, after Kevin Everts' death, Job kind of pulled back and said, okay, well, let's reevaluate. And he pushed back on Tim Szymanski and Bob Smith and Sean Pybus, who were the command staff above him, who had come into country right before he died. We'll talk about that. But he had been pushing back on them to not do more nighttime type raids where they have, an element of surprise and things like that. So, and I know that from talking to people that this was kind of a theme of doing daylight raids, the whole Jocko thing and doing daylight raids. And I don't know anything about it. I can just tell you that Job was pushing back. And I don't know, it seems better if you can own the night, why wouldn't you use the night? But I think the hearts and mind part played a big role in that. That focus played a role in having to do these things during the daytime versus at night. I don't know if you guys have any insight on that specifically, but that seems logical to me.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they're trying to do all the daylight. Does it mean it you get better pictures out of it? I don't know. You know what I mean?
I have no idea. Well, it speaks to a larger thing. Like this was never what, SEALs were meant to do. Like when we got into this, there was a real weird time, like really like 2007 through really 2020 of GWOT, where everybody was looking for work. Like the SEALs desperately wanted to get into Iraq and they didn't, and that's why the Army Tier 1 unit ended up getting Saddam. And they basically split it up in the early days of GWOT. They were like, all right, SEALs, we're going to give you guys Afghanistan. Well, then the SEALs were like, well, if I'm tracking this correctly, there's not a whole lot of water there. There's not a whole lot of, literal space for us to use or for us to do our actual job, which is seaborne operations. So everybody kind of got into this weird space where they're like, no, we can totally do direct action. What are you guys doing? FID? The Army does FID? No, we can totally do FID. We can work with these partner forces and win hearts and minds and do that mission and all this other stuff. And it got to be this weird thing where you're like, wait, you're a West Coast SEAL team that's over here working with a partner for, why are you guys doing that? And they were like, nah, man, trying to get in the fight. And really what they turned that into was direct action. Like they said they were doing FID, foreign internal defense, and security force assistance, and really what they were doing is they were just trying to prosecute high value targets. And we saw this, in the Operation Anaconda. Like when you look at what the SEALs were trying to do in Anaconda, like they were constantly basically using an algorithm to be like, no, we're going after high value targets only. So we're only going to go after these certain ones. And that started the, pulling the thread to what happened on Roberts Ridge was, we do want to do this. We don't want to do this. After, the initial parts of Operation Anaconda were going, that's what led Bill Hyder and his folks to push everybody to the top of that mountain, because they were like, oh, there might be more high value targets. We want to get in this fight. It was a thing all the way through GWOT, and that started way back in 2002.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point with Roberts Ridge, and if you think, SEALs, just like the special tactics in the Air Force, it's a smaller community. It's not like 200,000 people. It's 3,000-4,000 people in the SEAL community, and it's not illogical to think that people who started especially in the officer position, as the guy in charge of an operation at the lower level officer, but still powerful, like Tim Szymanski during Roberts Ridge, who's the one that pushed everything from the top that he had received. He's the one that put Szymanski and SEAL Team 6 guys with John Chapman on the mountain. It was his operational planning that caused that, and his lack of understanding the risks of that, because he wanted specifically to be the one that killed bin Laden. Right, has been his goal, is to have that feather in his cap. And if you follow the trajectory of all the criminal enterprise that has happened for over 20 plus years within the Navy SEALs, Tim Szymanski, who was the ops officer for the Roberts Ridge, we'll call it, if you just follow his progression up the food chain to becoming a vice admiral or rear admiral, whatever he was, when he retired as number 2 at JSOC, that his touch points are on every one of those crimes that have occurred, that the bigger name ones and some smaller ones that people don't even know about, where he was his hand was on a lot of the people involved in those missions.
And you don't even need to be a 30-year investigator, folks. You could just look at it and go, why do I have the same name that keeps popping up in all of these reports? Why is it always the same? And in this case, it's like the same 3 people, right? Hyder, Szymanski, Slabinski, a couple of these other names. Why do these names keep popping up? Why?
And that's, when back to Joe, because I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of all of the crimes that have occurred, because I'm not an expert on those. I've been briefed on them from people that were there, and I've talked publicly about them in a non-specific way. But the reality is that my only goal is Job, and I will do whatever it takes to get Job justice, and that means going out and talking about Rob O'Neill or Mark Luttrell or Chris Kyle or Jocko or anybody. I'm going to do that because if it brings eyes and ears, then it's going to help Job. Tim Szymanski was in the country a week before Job died, visiting with him. I'll say there was a heated debate, argument between Job and Szymanski a few days before he died, and I've heard from people who were outside the door, who couldn't hear all the context, but I know a lot of it was his lack of trust doing the daylight raids anymore and not wanting to do those things. Job, and again, everybody has said that was there, and in all their statements, that Job was withdrawn, he was depressed, he was struggling with the deaths that had occurred. Again, I can't argue that. I don't have any proof that he wasn't. I have a lot of people saying he was, but again, I'm sure some people that have gone through depression, who've lost people, who've suffered traumatic events, that are still alive, that aren't dead. And for me, you can tell me how sad he was and withdrawn and he hadn't been working out and not sleeping well. You can tell me all those things, but it doesn't change the evidence that was found. Just contextually, it'd be great if all the evidence pointed to suicide, then that information would be helpful. But it doesn't change the facts that the evidence proves he was murdered. So the big thing that caused Job his death were the guys underneath him were unhappy that he was reducing the number of missions they were going out on because of his concerns over the daylight raids. The Kalash incident with Team 2, and the retribution that was called, that was not passed on to Job, which caused Kevin Ebert's death. I've heard two different versions that it was Cantor's death who was the ambush and Ebert's was not. It doesn't really matter. One of those two guys were ambushed, and that was what people believe was the payback for the Taliban death, the lower County death.
And if you think about how we're building this, like, why would the team be so angry against Job? Like, remember, Job came in and recommended a court-martial for what appears to be a war crime.
Yeah,
that is how he was against SEALs, against your own, right? Like, and speak every conversation that you and I have had, and hearing your personal connection with Job and the type of person that Job was, it totally fits in that he would come in and look at it objectively with his high morals and standards and go, guys, the facts of the matter are this was a bad thing, and we're going to have some accountability for it. And if you've never went against your team, like I've made, obviously nothing on this level, but there are times where I had to look at my team and go, hey guys, we're going to have to take our medicine on this one. Like, we screwed this one up. And unfortunately, like, in order to protect our own specific brain, in order to protect pararescue and our own personal integrity, we're going to have to take our medicine on this one. And I'll tell you what, that's not popular. It's much more popular to go, hey guys, we all agree that this was fucked up, right? Okay, well, we're going to agree internally that this was messed up, and then we're going to move on, and we can't do that again, right? That's what team dudes want their commander to do. So to have Job come in and his first real decision in theater as the incoming commander is to recommend a court-martial for something that probably deserved it, you can imagine how the team guys would immediately be like, this guy's a traitor. They would start forming in their mind, especially those lower team dudes, those lower enlisted guys that don't have all the facts or all the knowledge or whatever. The only thing that they see is one of their own recommending that their own get punished.
And that's sad, because that is the fact, right? That those are all true statements. And, again, everything I'm saying right now is contextual in a why, right? And when you're investigating anything, unless you have a DNA on a scene that's foreign from the person that's there, or fingerprints or trace evidence like hair or blood or whatever. If you have those things there and you can tie somebody to the crime scene that shouldn't have been at the crime scene, then that's a really solid way of investigating. Otherwise, you're piecing together all these different nuanced things in order to create something that matches the evidence, right? That's
right.
what you're building towards.
Well, and I said it on the first podcast, but we talk about circumstantial evidence or contextual evidence. Listen, all of it is outside of some detective visualizing the actual crime. All evidence is circumstantial. All evidence is contextual. It's the investigator's job to connect that evidence in a logical manner and say, listen, all of these things you can't look at. Sure, it might be circumstantial in a silo, or if there's one piece of information or one piece of data. There are literally hundreds of pieces of data that connect coherently to support what you're saying. And as a matter of fact, they completely contradict the narrative and the story that's out.
I mean, yes, thank you for saying that. And it's when you, again, I wasn't Joe's best friend. We were in the same classes together. We graduated together. Like, we knew each other from school, but we didn't have any outside life together, where I never met his family. Like, we didn't have that kind of relationship. My goal was to look at the evidence and see where it went. And if it was suicide, I told his dad this. I said, if it's suicide, I'm going to tell you it's suicide. If it's not suicide, I'm going to tell you something isn't right. And then that's where it started. And then moving forward over 5-6 years, this is when those contextual pieces, the circumstantial pieces, all start to come together, when you're figuring out the ineptitude of NCIS, the criminality of the guys on this team, the stealing of ASOT money, $40,000, $30,000 to $40,000 of ASOT money, which went missing, that Job found out about. All the pieces, the retribution, the guys not liking him, all these things start to put together a narrative that then, when the forensic evidence comes to light, it all adds up. The puzzle gets put together. I did an interview with a Military Times reporter, and I used the analogy, and I think it's probably one of my better ones, is that when I got the information, it was a 1,000 piece puzzle set box with a picture on the outside of what they wanted the reports to look like. But inside was 250 pieces. I couldn't get to the picture on the outside because I didn't have enough information, but I'd had enough information to go, what they concluded couldn't be true based on the information that was presented to me initially. So that's kind of how I started this whole investigation.
what's still confusing for me is people that were there in country during this time frame, right? And then part of these communities that want to come after you and say this doesn't make sense. Like money missing, guys competing to see who can get the most kills, guys upset with their commands because they don't want to do all these things, guys upset over their friends getting killed, guys upset with commanders for holding people accountable. Like none of this, as you're talking through we have this tendency to retire and get out and like look back and be like, no, my community is full of like the highest integrity people, and we would never do that, and blah blah blah. Put on these rose-colored glasses. When if you were actually around all of this stuff, like there was like this almost manic sense amongst a lot of the folks in this community, in the special operations community that were going downrange, where you were competing with the folks that were there before you. Especially like, I mean, Jocko's talked about it. Like, we had to go out there and like get it on so that we could look better than the guys that were there before us. All the guys on team, they like all the SEALs, they all talk, right? Like the team to team, the team that was there before them. Everybody's trying to get out there and get their kill on, and it doesn't sound great to say it out loud. And everybody wants the bronze star, the silver star, whatever, the recognition that they went on the biggest raid and killed the most people, so they can go home and talk about it and tell their boys that they're they're better than their friends, right? So it's not unusual. Money goes missing all the time. Like the joke that we bought a lot of gravel. Where do you think that comes from? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
you can tell when you mentioned the ASOT money disappearing, Trent's fate, he just started smiling and laughing. Bro, that is such a common thing. Like ASOT, like people mismanaging ASOT money. Like you're telling me that given an E5 a briefcase with $100,000 of cash that he just gets to go get every 6 months, all he has to do is like sign this little book. I did it. I had ops fund money that I would go up to a larger base and sign it out from a cash cage. And then we'd be like, well, if we need to, give some money to the airfield manager for his fees, or if we need gravel for stuff, like we need to find a way to make this happen. It is so pervasive that it's a joke amongst people that know, and the people that don't know, they're like, that can never happen. And we're like, bro, that happens all the time. All the time.
It's funny because everybody comes at me, and again, I wasn't there. I was never in the military during the GWOT era. I don't know anything about ASOP money. I don't understand. I have no experience whatsoever in this. This is just me asking questions of people who were there and information that was cultivated, not just by me, but by people who were involved in SEAL corruption investigations prior to me. And these are people in the community. These aren't Matt Kublers all running around the world, doing these investigations thinking we're Columbo. These are people that are in the community that have been looking at this stuff and trying to uncover and get the right voice out there to uncover the systemic problem within the Navy SEALs. And again, I don't give a fuck about the systemic problem in the Navy SEALs. Don't care at all. They can eat each other. They can kill whoever the fuck they want. I don't care. It doesn't impact my life. I'm not interested in it. I'm only interested in it if it brings Job justice. And if I can use that information to manipulate solutions to the problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. That's the only thing I care about. And the missing ASOP money is huge because the guy that Job spoke to a couple days before his death, Job told him he was the guy that took the ASOP money and said, listen, this guy, you got 48 hours to recover that money and put it back. I spoke to the warrant officer many times who was the one who oversaw the ASOT project. He says our books were solid. There was no missing money. I'm like, well, listen, dude, I've spoken to a lot of people, and the books. I mean, it's not like Schumann and Schumann accounting, right? This is some guys that are just writing down shit on a piece of paper saying I gave $50,000 to Johnny Jihad.
That's literally what it is. No kidding. Yeah. You have the old school carbon. You had a book, and there was a carbon copy receipt, and you hand wrote in there, and you didn't need a signature. There was no verified second or third party. There was no disinterested official. There was nobody looking over your shoulder. You literally would just go back to that cage that I was talking about, and you would hand your receipts in, and you go, here you go. And then they would take that information and they would write it in their little book. I'm not even aware if there was like some sort of digital counterpart to this that got sent up the chain or whatever. It was just like, hey, we gave you money. Did you write your receipt down? Half the time, if you didn't have your receipt, you'd make it up when you got back to base. That is what happened.
And there's another thing, whether this is ops funds or ASOP money or all this other stuff, like ops funds might be a little bit different. No, not really. But like if you don't spend it, then the folks that come next and the programs that we're talking about, all of your ASOT operations, all this other stuff, if you don't spend the money, then the program isn't working, right? Then you don't get the funds for the next time. Like that's just like a government ism. So they're not like wanting you to bring that briefcase or that box full of cash back. You know, like that it's I don't know if it's actually said out loud very many times, but it's implied that like, hey, go do it, spend the money,
Right.
it's okay,
And by
no
the
one's
way,
gonna like, no one
you're
cares.
gonna
Just write
you're
something
gonna
down.
it's a bigger process for me to have to take this money back from you, and I'm not trying to work that hard, so don't bring me any money back. I don't want to have to explain this to anybody. That's the reality of it.
And if the team replacing you is short 10 grand or whatever it is on their stuff because you didn't spend enough of your money, and it's like, oh, well, we don't need that much money in this location, they're going to be pissed at you too, because now they're short on their funds that they might need. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I'm sorry.
No, I think that context, because I wasn't there and I don't know all of the ins and outs like you guys do on how frequent this is. I mean, if you look at Melgar, Staff Sergeant Melgar, he was killed by 2 Navy SEAL Team 6 guys and a Marine Raider. And, they ended up walking away with their convictions overturned. But that was over ASOT money. Going missing. He was going to report him for using it for drugs and buying diamonds and hookers and all kinds of stuff. And I don't know what the money that was stolen from SEAL Team 4's ASOT money that Job uncovered. I do know that he had sent back word to a couple people that when they got back from their deployment that there was going to be a lot of problems that were going to be as a result of what happened over there. And I think part of the argument he had with Tim Szymanski was that. And Tim Szymanski, knowing the history of what his touch points are and all these things, is kind of the orchestrator, the queen bee of the whole thing. He probably told him to knock the fuck off, let it be, don't cause problems, lead your fucking men, come back, go to college, become an admiral. That's probably the conversation that was had. I know for a fact that Job was murdered. I am 90% certain he was murdered by his own men, based on the contextual evidence that people told me from the arguments, the retribution, the way Job was acting, the anger within the guys below him for the way he was leading their team, and then the ASOT money. I'm pretty sure his own guys did it. But let's just say they didn't. Who would have access to the commander's bunk room? And I don't know if there's armed guards outside these doors or what. I just know that it doesn't make sense to me that if it wasn't one of the guys, who could have done it?
Wouldn't have been very easy.
No.
And
I mean, I don't know this team, right? Like I don't know these guys. And I did want to put out, like, this isn't like a thing about all special operations guys. Like, this is whatever. But like, most guys are pretty paranoid at their fobs about their security, about making sure like things are set up. And you go from like claymores to like things that make noise, right? But that you're usually in these little buildings. There's hallways. I doubt that he was in like in a standalone building by himself. He's probably in a complex with all these other dudes. It should not be easy to get to anybody in that, like, and everybody knows in Afghanistan, like, if there's a SEAL team, they're doing work, you're a target. You're more of a target than, say, your army artillery guy, right? Like, it just the same way that these guys are revered or whatever. When they come home, they write books and people want to buy it. Like, the Taliban knows if you kill a SEAL, it's a different than killing, your run of the mill. No offense to like your infantry bros or whatever else, but it's from a marketing perspective, it's a much bigger deal, and it's not like we don't understand that and don't take precautions that suit the situation.
that's, yes, I agree with that 100%. And that's why when I can follow evidence that is provable and make claims to the fact that he was murdered. The who did it is a directly correlated result of the NCIS and who did it and how I can't figure that out with evidence is because absent somebody admitting they did it or watched somebody else do it, all of the evidence was destroyed. There is nothing that could potentially be used in any court of law, whether it's military or civilian, because once you lose a crime scene containment, once you determine that something happened in a place, and you then turn that security of that place over to a non-law enforcement person, i.e. the command master chief Jeff Peeler, once you give him the key to that room for 9 hours, it doesn't matter if they didn't touch anything. It doesn't matter if that room was locked. You now have a contaminated crime scene. Because the implication could be, any defense attorney would go, well, how do we know you didn't go in and place the gun in his hand? How do we know you didn't go in and put those pill bottles near his bed? How do we know you didn't place the bullet in the casing where they were found? How do we know that? And the answer is you don't. So the realities are is that as fucked up as this case is, it was brilliantly executed by the Navy SEALs and NCIS to make sure that no one could ever be held accountable unless someone opens their yap. And that's the part that is, if we're talking about conspiracies and cover-ups, the level of effort that was given to make this go away for them individually. Again, if you look at Chapman, right, there's a fucking video that shows exactly what happened, and it's still not the universal truth in the SEAL community and special tactics and special operations or the fucking government. So they know how to get away with shit, even if they're on fucking film doing it.
Well, and here's the thing too. Like, so like if you're like, oh, like how could a whole team possibly get away with this? Look, I'm just gonna put it out there, and I don't want to be OJ about this and be like, if I did it too much, but there's a difference between the entire team getting together and assigning someone to murder their commander, and most of the guys probably woke up that day and it had already happened. And you don't have to like actually say it, but like if you're not upset about it, or if there's two guys on the team that are upset about it, and it's like, well, this is what happened, bro. This is what happened, and nobody knows, and there's only one guy that actually knows what happened because he wasn't actually assigned to do it. It just happened. You know, like you know what I mean? Like it's not that many steps to control the narrative, and to the guys that probably had questions on the team, because there's probably a few of them, like they don't have any evidence about anything. They're not going to turn on their bros. They're in a dangerous situation at that point where they are in Afghanistan, and if you suspect that one of your teammates murdered someone and you can't prove it, I'll tell you from some related experience in a very tertiary way that it's not a great feeling, and it's weird. And if you don't have the evidence, you're not going to just speak up as an individual against an entire community while you're in a place where everybody's armed. Everybody, like it's a tense situation to begin with, and it really wouldn't be that hard to get away with it and to create a situation where no one's going to talk about it.
Well, and I'll tell you what, like we have an exact example of this, and it happens at all levels. The things that people get wrapped around the axle is like, oh, there's this huge conspiracy. There's no way that you'd be able to hold it down. No, this happens at all levels all the time. There was a PJ when we were doing the enabler mission that was working with an army team. They were clearing a building. It was a 2-breach entry. The PJ walked into a room and a Green Beret walked into a room, and the Green Beret shot the PJ. Everyone in our community knows this. I know his name. I know where he works. I've heard his story. They took a 5.56 round, a NATO 5.56 round out of this dude's leg and arm. He has lifelong injuries. They covered that up like a mofo. There was never a report of a green on green. There was never a report of friendly fire incidents injuring a PJ and causing him. He had to be medevaced. He went to the hospital. They took him to Germany. There are pictures with like high-ranking officials. And the official narrative surrounding that is he got shot on target, and that's as far as it went. Everybody in the PJ community knows that a Green Beret shot one of our PJs, and we just sort of know it, and then you just sort of go on. And there was no appetite to be like, hey, man, so one of your dudes shot on one of our guys. That just is what happens, and it happens at all levels. It happens at the squadron level. At the squadron level, there will be things like sometimes you're right on that line of safety, or maybe somebody does something that isn't the greatest. That'll even get kept inside the teams. Somebody will walk over to your team room and be like, hey, guys, heard you guys might have had a little off-DZ drop the other day. And everybody in that team room will go, no, we didn't. No, man, that was the aircraft. No, that was, it was just a bad spot, and the winds were bad, and they got out. When in reality, what happened is the jump master made the wrong calculation. They put them off over spot, and they put their teams at danger, but you keep a rap on it. And the people that want to speak up are shamed and literally threatened to not say those things out loud. This happens at all levels. It is just a part of the game that people from the outside looking in do not understand, and then they can't grasp that this would happen on such a level with such terrible outcomes.
Yeah.
One of the things that really stood out to me, and I don't know if we talked about this on the last one or not, but if you look at the GWOT era, how many commander level people committed suicide in theater? Zero. None. Now, Job, if the you want to believe he committed suicide, which he didn't, but he would be the only one. 3 days before Christmas, when he has a 9-year-old daughter and wife at home, when he's rotating out in 3 months, like all of the things that, regardless of whether or not he was struggling, regardless of whether or not he wasn't sleeping right, all of those things are not leading me to any direction other than, yes, I will stipulate that those things are real, but you can't show me. They have yet to prove a single stitch of evidence that proves that Joe Price committed suicide. Not one. Not ballistics, not DNA, not GSR, gunshot residue, nothing. Everything is missing. It's all not there. The DNA I got is they took the blood that was on the bullet, which was found in a place that it could never have gotten to on its own trajectory, and even with ricochets. They tested that bullet and saw that there was, because it was laying in a pool of blood, that the blood that was on that bullet was Job's. Now, that bullet transferred, it would have trace evidence from the skin, hair, skull, brain, skull, skin, hair, both sides. There would be trace evidence on that bullet to show that it went through Job's melon. And that test was never done.
Was the test ever done on the weapon? Did they ever test the actual weapon?
Well, so I have the ballistics show that the gun, the bullet, and the casing all came from the gun that Job was holding. The problem is that Job was shot with a suppressor. I sent a video to you, which we can't show yet, but Job had in the autopsy photos was a half circle, 1.5 inch diameter, which is the exact diameter of a can or a suppressor, and would explain why no one heard a gunshot that night.
I was going to ask that question. I was like, well, did it have a can on it? Because there's no way that in most of these buildings that we all live in over there that someone wouldn't hear an unsuppressed 9mm go off, and be there immediately. Yeah.
Right. So the fact that they never tested the bullet for brain matter and things is because they knew it wouldn't exist. It wasn't there. And the gun that was shot, that shot the bullet and left the casing, was not the gun that killed him.
But
the
Matt,
gun that killed him had a suppressor. Job's gun was not capable of being suppressed.
But the SEALs didn't have a single can in the country. They said 100% that they didn't have suppressors. I'm sure there isn't a fucking picture out there with guys with a suppressed pistol.
With a pistol that's suppressed. I'm just saying, from his team, with Rob Huberty, actually he posted it. It was a picture of Rob Huberty posted, and everyone to a man has said they didn't use suppressed weapons as part of their mission. So there were none. And even if there was a suppressed weapon, no one would have had access to it in the middle of the night. I'm just saying there's a picture that Rob Huberty posted, that has a guy with his face blurred out with a holster with a suppressor on it.
Why wouldn't you have access to your weapons and suppressors in the middle of the night?
You have access all the time. I slept with every single deployment I had. I had a long gun and a pistol next to my bed, whatever weapons that I brought with me. Some nights I would sleep with that Scar Heavy because it's just nicer to snuggle with. Like, what are we talking about? Everybody knows this.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
You have different barrels. You have suppressors. Like I was an Air Force weather guy, and I had all this crap. Like, you're telling me a SEAL team doesn't have it? That they wouldn't have access to it? Like, no, sorry.
And all of it is just another red herring to go chase, right? But when it's all said and done, again, a lot of this took me 5 years to get from FOIA requests. The GSR, the gunshot residue. When you shoot a gun, there's powder that blows back, right? You're going to have something on your hand that shows that you recently fired a weapon. And as an investigator, even a shitty investigator, you'd go, yeah, we probably need to do that GSR thing. Where do we test? Right? How about the hand? Right? They didn't test the hand. They tested the sheet and the plywood that was under his mattress for gunshot residue. Those are the two places they tested. And it proved that there was gunshot residue because there was gas going forward and powder as well. So it proves that he was shot, but it doesn't prove that he shot himself. There is no latent fingerprint taken off of the casing that was found. They didn't even analyze it for latent fingerprints. The casing was under his body in a way that it could never, there's no physical physics way that the casing could have ended up under Job's body. When they rolled him over, the casing was under him. It physically could not have done it.
It's like the perfect Kennedy bullet that showed up in the hospital. They're like, oh, here's a bullet that's never passed through anything. This must have been the one. But also, like, his pistol on his chest. Like, you were a police officer for a lot of years. And maybe I'm not great at physics or how the body reacts once, it goes through these things. But to go from here to be resting, is that accurate how they say it happened?
Yeah, it was literally right under his chin. He was laying on his left side. So, and I'm just again, we talked about this before. Please go watch the first episode. But you have to look at this from a totality perspective.
Yeah.
He was naked in his bunk, in his sleeping bag. His upper part of his body was exposed. Lower body was covered. He slept that way every single night of his life. He was a nude sleeper. I don't know why that's fucking important, but it is in this context. He always slept with his pillow in the crook of his arm. He was found laying on his back with a pillow in the crook of his arm, naked with a gun on his chest with a bullet hole to his head. He was laying on his left side when he was shot. The bullet went through his head, went through the pillow, went through the mattress, ricocheted, hit a desk, and they say ended up underneath his bed in the back corner by his head when there's Pelican boxes all blocking the entryway of that, but apparently that's where it ended up. So the trajectory of being on your left side, pulling the trigger, falling back on your right side, on your back, your head turning to the opposite direction, and a gun landing on your chest is impossible. Now, people have had guns in their hands after they committed suicide. There are rare occasions when there's a muscular, basically a contraction that doesn't release,
right,
that holds the weapon still in their hand. But again, absent knowing that happens, physically, he couldn't have ended up in the position he was in, just understanding physics. And number two, that gun wasn't used to kill him. There's no proof. If they had done a test and said, yeah, there was brain matter, skin, hair, whatever on that bullet, then I'd be like, all right, how do I then prove that gun wasn't what shot him if I have all that trace evidence, which I don't have. I don't have any of those answers because they were never tested for. And then the coup de grace, which is what you spoke of earlier, Aaron, is that how and why would anybody wash and scrub the entire body of their commander after being told by the NCIS agent, who was an officer, do not touch the body? And in his notes, he says, based on his body language, I did not believe he was going to listen to me. Well, they released the body to the medical people. The SEAL ordered medical people to wash his body, take the bags. They bagged his hands, which is the only thing they did right. NCIS. They bagged his hands, which then, had there been anything on his hands, at Dover when he was going through his autopsy, they would have tested that there. As a cop, you want to have two sets, right? You want to have the on scene and whatever is determined later on at whatever the autopsy or whatever. So you want to have those two, compare them. They don't have any comparison because it was never tested, his hands. And then they took the bags off, washed his whole body, scrubbed his hands, put the bags back on, new bags back on, taped them as if they were still secure crime scene tape. Put him in a uniform, put a watch cap on, washed his wound, put a bandage on his head, and sent him back to Germany and then to Dover. So those things, and then, by the way, nobody was held accountable for destroying evidence. There was not a single person was ever disciplined for anything that, even if he was a suicide victim, you should have been disciplined for fucking with shit, right?
Yeah.
At a minimum. Nobody was. And
they were just like all these crazy SEALs, completely and totally disregarding a lawful order by an officer and an investigator. Oh, these little scamps, like they got a little head rub, they ruffled their little hair.
I don't understand because their motto is "Long live the brotherhood," right?
Yeah.
And I've asked every SEAL that has ever told me that, even the ones that have said that, yes, we believe there's something different that happened there than what they're saying. None of them are going to say anything publicly. Very few of them, because they don't want to destroy their brotherhood, right? They don't want. They may be unhappy and they're willing to talk off the record, but Long Live the Brotherhood, LLTW, is real in that community. And I don't know how it is in the Air Force, but that's like the mafia, right? Muerta.
The code of silence, right? This thing of ours.
We're all little cults. of different things. And it's funny because when you're talking about the NCIS person briefing the SEALs, like I've seen that conversation happen a million times where someone outside the community, it doesn't matter what rank they are, but you're not part of us. Be like, hey, you guys can't do this. Even if you were telling me something that had nothing to do with this, that wasn't even that serious,
Completely
we'd be
benign,
like,
right?
yeah, bro. Yeah.
You do it. Oh,
Okay.
you guys can't have beards. You guys can't wear your uniforms like that. You guys can't do whatever. If you're not wearing a beret, I literally will tell you to go fuck off to your face. I will be like, shut the fuck up. No.
And that's, and that's not wrong, right?
Right.
But when you're talking about a murder,
Yeah.
right? If you're talking about some missing money and some guys found out about it and they're like, dude, don't tell anybody. I don't care about that stuff. I'm just saying, if you murdered your commander, and the reason why he was murdered is because he was looking at you for all these crimes that have occurred. And by the way, there was also a sexual assault that he was investigating from one of his guys on a local Afghani, underage sexual assault. So there's a lot of things, and that was apparently an ongoing problem in theater, was almost like fun rapes, right? Like let's find a fucked up kid, maybe 13, 14 years old, fucking rape them and then kill them and then let them be found. That had happened many times and different, not just Jobs, but many other people have told me from their experiences what had happened. And again, I don't care about any of it. I don't want to be in the know on what Red's name is, the guy that killed bin Laden. I know that, but I don't want to know any of that. I don't need to know about Rob O'Neill. And I do feel honored that Rob O'Neill, 10 months after our interviews, went on a podcast, his own podcast, and for whatever reason went on a 3-minute diatribe about me and Jeremy Sladen, who was the host of the podcast that we did the interviews on, called us jackwagon. So I've been called a jackwagon by Rob O'Neill. I've been called a douche by Eddie Gallagher. And then Sean Ryan told me that he wasn't an international drug dealer, just a drug dealer. And I'm like, well, you said multiple different countries where you set up operations. That's kind of international. So, like, I would rather Matt Cubbler never be known. Ever. Do I like talking? Sure. Do I like podcasts? Yes. Do I get some level of enjoyment out of stirring this pot a little? Of course. But I also would rather just be anonymous and just go away. So I am at the point now where I've had conversations with a U.S. senator's staffer who's responsible for military affairs, who's looking into it. So my goal is to get a congressional hearing on Job's case. I have reached out to Pete Hegseth multiple times. Pete is someone I was working with when he was at Fox. He is, without giving away too much detail, because I need to hold on to some of this for leverage, but let's just say Pete didn't argue with the suicide narrative. And if that's the case, and he saw the case file that I looked at, and he didn't yet have the forensic evidence or the ballistic evidence that I had, or the DNA evidence that I now have, or the GSR evidence that I now have, that wasn't part of the initial thing he saw. But what he looked at, he said there's absolutely no way he committed suicide. Now, he's now the Secretary of Defense. And if the Secretary of Defense, whether he was a Fox News guy or the Secretary of Defense, the evidence didn't change. His access to it didn't change. His ability to deduce and reason didn't change. If that's what he believed in 2023, why doesn't he care now? And I've emailed, texted, left voicemails. He needs to do something.
Absolutely. Like, yeah, absolutely. But like what, so just so we're clear, what is it that you are trying to accomplish? Because it doesn't sound like Matt Cubbler wants to be famous. It doesn't sound like you are, at least in the beginning, very concerned about another teammate going to jail or knowing who did it. My perception is you just want the record to state that Job did not commit suicide, but that he was murdered, to go into the official record, right?
Yes, I don't, and I've gotten the blessing from his wife, and who's now back on board, which I'm happy about. She was unhappy with me because of things I said on a podcast, and I hadn't heard from her in 5 years, and she sent me this email demanding that we talk, and I'm like, we'll talk when I'm available. And she sent me an email basically telling me what she was upset about, which, again, I don't have a problem with Job's wife. I just have a problem with the fact that she didn't help me for 5 years. And I've made some accusations against her, which aren't wrong or unfactual, but I wanted to get her to come back to the table, and she did. And whether she's all in or not, I don't know, but at least our communication lines are open, and I'm helping her understand what I've done over the last 5 years. They all agree that the only thing they expect, what they want, is a head on a platter. But what they expect as a minimum is that a clerical decision is made, that his case be changed from suicide to homicide, and then they can put it as a cold case with no solution involved, right? They don't care. I don't care whether or not I find out who did it. I just care that the truth is that he didn't commit suicide. That's the official record. His dad in death can rest in peace. His sister can be vindicated. His wife can receive his pension and his life insurance policy. Because those are all things that are on the table that have yet to be completed. And if I do that, then my mission, my promise, everything I've ever made to anybody is done. I told Pete, I told the senator's staff that I will sign an NDA. I won't write any books. I won't go on any more podcasts. I won't say Job's name publicly again, or the Navy SEALs. And I'll go away. I don't need any more of this nonsense. And
I'll write a
so
book, and it'll be called Jackwagon, and the book will be all about
I've
this.
never been called that before.
That's such a funny thing.
I know. I actually had to explain it to him. He was like, "I've never even heard that term before." I was like, "Jackwagon." Jackwagon is an elite military slur. Like calling somebody,
it's almost as good as soup sandwich, right?
It really is. Yeah, jackwagon is just like soup sandwich is like you can never do anything right. Like soup sandwich doesn't make sense, but jackwagon, I don't know where it came from. It doesn't have like an etymology that I can suss out. But I will tell you, if you call somebody a jackwagon, like Trent was like, this guy's a total jackwagon, I would intimately understand that I do not like this guy already because one of my friends called him a jackwagon. So wear that as a badge of honor, my friend.
I do. And my wife got a little fired up because in that interview, I have been on a lot of podcasts. I've written a book. I've done a lot of things in law enforcement. So I'm easy to find on Google, right? If you just type in Matt Cubbler, there's a lot of stuff that you can read about me or hear about or whatever. So Rob, when he called me a jackwagon, said that. Well, this is how he says, he goes, one guy says he was law enforcement, but I don't buy that.
What?
Bro, I was a federal air marshal. I was featured on CNN. Like, you're telling me you didn't do enough research to even get to the one story that you could actually say something mean about me, and you didn't even bother?
And what was even worse, he's like, the only thing I really do know about the guys, he probably married a fat, ugly chick.
Oh, come on.
My wife's a smoke show. She is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauty that I'm lucky to call my wife and my partner for the last 30 plus years. So he can go suck a bag of dicks. And that's all I know.
Well, talking about investigations and stuff, that's an investigation I want to get into is how did your ugly ass get a smoke show of a wife?
I'll tell you, drunk dancing by myself 2 days before Thanksgiving, 1994. I was dancing with two pitchers by myself on the dance floor, and she found me amusing. I don't remember meeting her. I did give her my business card. Back then, we had business cards with my pager number on it.
Yes.
And 3 days later, she paged me. And I'm like, I'll meet you. So we met at another bar, and I asked a buddy who's a cop, his brother, to come with me. I'm like, dude, I need a wingman because if she's hot, we stay. If she's not, we roll. Like,
the second you saw her, you're like, buddy, get out of here. Don't talk to this woman.
We're staying.
He got a page and he had to go real quick.
I did, the pager. Yeah, that's dating myself. I had a bag phone too. You guys don't even know what those are, do you?
I do too, you son of a bee.
Wow.
You are a jackwagon.
Yeah, that's a lot of judgment for the GWOT generation. You're like,
I know, right?
I don't know what pagers
are.
How
dare you? I can't wait to make I can't wait to make a reel where we're like, this guy never even touched ground in Afghanistan. I can't believe he talked to me like that.
And Matt, again, I don't want any more podcasts. I'm going on them, but I don't care if Anna here ever has me on again. Again, I'm happy that what I provided to them and what Eric Deming provided to them catapulted them because of the number of views that were from those episodes. I'm happy that they're doing well. I really am. I understand their shtick. I don't need to go through that anymore. I don't need to have those conversations anymore. You're a good dude, Aaron. I appreciate you. You've allowed me to have a platform. Trent, it's great having you on this episode. Was Trent the one that bailed at the last minute the first time? Or who was that? I remember you were, was that Pete?
I think it
Okay.
was Peaches, and you know what's funny about that is that he actually bailed on us again today. He had a valid excuse this morning, but he actually bailed again, so he's 2 for
I'm
2
just
with
saying,
you.
maybe change the time and day. Like maybe he's a
Absolutely
better
not.
evening guy.
No,
All of our wives. Look, if you don't have a schedule, there's a thing.
it's a whole thing. Yeah, unless we get it, like we've recorded at this time forever because like if you can get up and finally be done by the time the house starts moving, you get a lot less flack for it because we're not
I
very
bet.
good social media influencers, brother.
Well, again, I thank you guys for giving me an opportunity and just hearing. And again, nobody has to agree with me. I don't give a fuck if they agree with me. I only need one thing to happen. Pete Hegseth to go with his initial reaction and say, yes, that was not suicide. Yes, I think it would be a bad look for the Navy. Yes, it would be a black eye for the Navy SEAL community if this became super public, which it could be. And let's just make this go to bed. And there's an exit ramp ready for them to take. And if they just take that exit ramp, which I can prove to anybody he was murdered, I can bring in expert witness after expert witness who will say that, yes, he was murdered and no, that gun didn't cause that wound. But
Uh,
I don't care about putting that out there in a public forum any more than, the 10, 15,000 people are going to watch this or whatever it ends up being. I don't need to be on CNN or MSNBC, which would be the direction I would have to go because Fox News wouldn't put anything bad about Pete Hegseth, right? So
yeah.
there would never be a hit piece on the Secretary of Defense on Fox
Yeah.
or Newsmax or OAN or any of those. And so the information would have to go to a different political persuasion outlet. And I
Yeah.
don't want to do that either. So I just want this to go away.
Well, and I think if people are looking for a reason to step up to the plate and to look into this and do the right thing, my biggest gripe about all this, and this is the last thing I'll say, it's the SEAL community stuff that we've all been talking about. You are dragging thousands of really good Navy SEALs down the drain with you. Like my big it's easy to talk about the SEAL community, right? But like man, I've met some great Navy SEALs. I've met some the great Green Berets, Rangers, all these other people. The problem with stuff like this is when we go in there and we talk about Navy SEALs, it's not all of them. You know what I mean? Like do the right thing for the guys that showed up, for the guys like Job that showed up, that wanted to do their job, that believe in the integrity, that believe in doing the right thing. Do it for them so that you're not dragging their names through the dirt as well. And admit to your mistakes and be the professional organization that we claim to be. It's okay to make mistakes. Like it's a dynamic environment. And if mistakes were made, like we see it all the time when there's legit mistakes and people want to jump on social media or whatever and make judgment calls. And it's like, we're like, oh, hey, well, you don't understand. But man, like it's easier to go after it and to fix it and to elevate the organization as opposed to just keep like pretending that things like this could never happen.
Right. And really the message is to all those good Navy SEALs. The message is directly to you. There's one thing that's worse than the evil of bad men in this world, and it's the indifference of good men. If you guys have knowledge of this, if you guys want to help right a wrong that happened to your brother, if it is all about the brotherhood, long live the brotherhood. If that is a true thing to you and you do connect with that, you got to get a hold of Matt. You got to go over to Who Killed Job Price. It's on the screen in front of you right now. So whokilledjobprice.com. Go over, get a hold of Matt, let him know, support the project. Like if this is a thing, all of you good Navy SEALs out there, if this is important to you, that you protect the Trident and protect your entire culture, then it's on you as a good man to do something about it. And you have to, because we got to
And
figure
I've met
this
a lot
out.
of guys that are SEALs who speak to me confidentially, and I protect their identities. I'm never going to say who they are, and they've given me a lot of great information, even not even specifically on Joe, but contextual stuff that helps me piece together the time frame, the era, the whatever that I can sort of immerse myself into. But you're right, silence is complicity, and when you allow something like this, again, if you want to talk about that we raided and there was an errant shot and somebody got killed, nobody needs to know about that. That shit happens in war. But when somebody conspires to kill and then cover up the murder of a commander of a SEAL team, and does so for their own protection, to hide and shield them from any criminal prosecutions, then that's a problem for me. And specifically, Joe Price is the only thing I care about. I can't say that enough. I don't care. I find it funny that Eddie Gallagher gives a fuck about what I say. I find it funny that Rob O'Neill thinks I'm a jackwagon. I find it funny. If anybody wants to watch Rob O'Neill, I did 6 hours of interviews with that motherfucker. There's plenty. You can go and find out whether what he said about me in that 3 minutes is true or not. Just go watch the fucking videos.
Yeah, I can't recommend that people actually go watch Rob O'Neill, but if you want to watch the Matt episodes with Rob, that's fine. Otherwise, I cannot not recommend it enough.
0 out of 10, do not recommend.
And I appreciate the I get, and I'll end with this. I get the bro vet community. Yeah. I understand it. I don't relate to it, but I understand it. And I understand why these podcasts exist, like Nate's, like Anti-Hero, like Chad Robichaux and all these other guys that are doing Sean Ryan. They're all trying to take what they did and what they learned over their career and use it for whatever they're using it for, whether it's for fame and fortune or to have a company to teach firearms training. I don't fucking know. I get it. I don't relate, but I get it. And I appreciate anytime I get a chance to go and speak to that community about something egregious that everyone should have an opinion about, that it's fucked up. And that shouldn't happen. And that should be, no matter what your intentions are with your post-military career, as far as making money and benefiting off of the things that you learned from the government, I'm fine with all that. That doesn't bother me whatsoever. I only care about if you're not helping to solve a problem within your community that is solvable. If everyone, Sean Ryan should be doing a fucking show on John Chapman tomorrow and saying, why is it you fucking retards can't just accept the fact that Prince Libiski's a liar, stole valor, he didn't do any of the things he said, and John Chapman was a fucking stud, and so was Neil Roberts. End of story. It's on video. That's the story, period. There's no other narrative. If you can't do that, then you're part of the problem.
Feels like a good place to end, Matt. Matt, I want to say thanks, man. You're doing the Lord's work here, and I hope, because it's what you said you wanted, I hope this is the last podcast you're ever on.
Me too.
I hope that we get the traction that we need just for a simple clerical change in some wording that benefits the family of a fallen special operator that we can 100% say didn't commit suicide, and we're at about 99% that he was killed, and he was killed by his team. That just is the facts.
And I will say that, and I told you this in the text, that the meeting with the senator's staff was facilitated by someone who watched the episode that I did with you the first time, a Navy SEAL who set that up for me. So, so your show has a touch point that is different from the Anti-Hero crowd or the, you know what I'm saying? So it's a very, I think, more serious and professional people watch your show maybe. I don't know, but
don't make me feel things, man. Like, this makes Trent and I so cringy. Like, I can tell by Trent's body language right now. He's like, how do I take a compliment?
Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, we're better. Just don't say it out loud.
Matt, we appreciate that. Everybody make sure to go check out number 1, the what, and then this one, the why. Watch them together. And most importantly, man, share this with everybody that you know. Share it to drive a conversation. Share it to drive some good out of a terrible situation. Do it for Job's family. Do it for Matt so that we never have to hear him talk again, because that's the end goal here. I want to say thanks for coming out. Thanks to everybody for listening. Share it with everybody you know. Go over to the Ones Ready page. You can find our link tree and find everywhere that we are. Make sure you're liking and subscribing, and a couple more followers would be cool. We have like 70% of the people that listen to the show that aren't subscribed. So maybe just go hit the subscribe button. It's free. You actually figure out when we put more content out, and you won't miss important episodes like this. So from us, from the whole team, from Peaches, who big timed you again, Matt, thanks for coming on. Everybody else, we'll see you next time.